Hello everybody and welcome to the United Stand. Manchester United face a transfer race with Liverpool for Alexis MACALLISTER, according to Fabrizio Romano, with transfer talks starting very soon. Sticking with Brighton, Moises Caicedo reveals his dream club transfer this summer. We've also got a statement from the Manchester United Supporters Trust talking about the Glazers and the prospect of them staying, and also news around players that could go and ranking them in how likely they are to go, how easy they would be to sell, and what clubs are interested in certain players like Scott McTominay, Anthony Martial and Jadon Sancho. It's a pleasure to be live with you all on a Saturday night. If you're watching live, I don't normally get to do a Saturday night show, so welcome to the show. Very, very excited about it. Lots to get into, and also because it's a bonus show, we will delve more into a bit of a Q&A. Let's hit the topics that you want to discuss. Let's have a load of interaction tonight. Really looking forward to it. Make sure you get involved. But before we get involved with all of that, you might see something next to me. You might already be a user and aware of what Surfshark is. But if you're not, Surfshark is a virtual private network. One of the best things I like about it is their data protection services, making sure my private messages, photos, videos, and other sensitive material is protected. But my personal favourite thing about Surfshark, and the thing I think you will like the most, is that you can change your location on Netflix or other location-specific streaming services, so you can watch them from anywhere in the world. So if you're in Australia and you want to use your UK Netflix, you can put your location as London when you're in Australia, and it thinks that's where you are. It's also available across every device you can think of: Android, iOS, Linux, Amazon Fire. You get the picture, and it's got some fantastic features in addition to that as well, where it can protect your information and let you know if it's been leaked online. But the big thing for you, the United Stand viewers, is because Surfshark are super nice, they're giving you, the United Stand viewers, 83% off and the first 3 months free. So not the first 1, 2, but 3 months free to check it out and try it out. Links in the description. Give it a go. It's free to do it for the first 3 months. Then it's 83% off. Give it a go. I don't think you'll regret it. Big shout out to Surfshark. Thank you very much for supporting the channel. Right, let's fly into the show. We're going to start off with what Fabrizio Romano has said in relation to Alexis MACALLISTER. Massive game for Manchester United tomorrow. Obviously, we'll be playing Manchester City in the final. If anybody was thinking that Sheffield United were going to get a result... I mean, look, did you see the empty seats in the Sheffield United end? Even they didn't bother to turn up in the masses because they knew what was going to happen. Respect to Sheffield United, but there ain't no way Man City's not going to beat them. And, you know, they picked quite a strong team as well. So it's Manchester United against Brighton to try and stop Man City in the FA Cup final, which could be massive. Glenn, welcome to the Members Club, by the way. Joined the Members Club before the stream started. Big shout out to him. And Muppet says, how are you, Mark? I'm doing good. Lee Johnston, there we go. So, Manchester United against Brighton tomorrow, but the first two things we're going to talk about before we get to this Manchester United Supporters Trust statement about the Glazers, and also prospects of people leaving the club and how likely they are to go, and your questions as well. Let's hit this first story. Liverpool and Manchester United are keen on signing Alexis MACALLISTER. Transfer talks are going to take place very soon, and this is from Fabrizio Romano. So it's looking more and more like it's a Manchester United versus Liverpool race for Alexis MACALLISTER, and we're playing them tomorrow. And look, you know, we have got the Argentinian connection with Martinez. Is Alexis MACALLISTER the sort of midfield that Manchester United should be looking at? You've also got Caicedo. He's been talking about what his dream move would be as well. Look, I've got to say, you hear little bits. We're not really into the transfer season at the moment, and when we are into the transfer season, then that's when I start talking to the people I normally talk to. I've got to say, I very rarely do it, and you'll know this. I don't really start having those conversations until late May because it's so full on. It takes up so much time, and I'm not really going to use my time speaking to all these people about transfers when it's March and April or September, October. We get Fabrizio on every couple of weeks, and that's about it from me. Unless I get told something, I don't go searching for it. So I don't know whether Man United are seriously looking at Alexis MACALLISTER. I really don't. It feels like we are definitely being used in this race, which could mean that we're in it, or it could mean that we're being used to bump up the price for Liverpool. I suspect Liverpool have a bigger desire for Alexis MACALLISTER than Manchester United. I think he's a good player. I think he ticks a lot of boxes. I think he's a very what I would call educated footballer, but what I mean, well, yeah, he's an educated footballer, and what I mean by that is that he can do many roles and he can play many ways. Look, the way he forced his way into that Argentinian World Cup side with the likes of Messi was very impressive. But probably more impressive is his ability to play in a Brighton side which is punching above its weight and do it in a very convincing way in a system that's very easy on the eye. He's an intelligent footballer, he's an educated footballer, and I don't think he'd have I actually think he's one of those players that logically would probably find his job easier in a better side. Because if you think, I mean, look, Roy Keane, when he was at Nottingham Forest, he went from a relegation side to Manchester United, and I think his level went up very, very quickly. Yes, he had to go through the student years of learning from people like Brian Robson and Paul Ince and everything like that, but he adapted very quickly from being a big fish in a small pond to a smaller fish in a big pond. But I think he actually found it easier because he was playing with better players in a, with a bigger platform. And I think that Alexi McAllister will do that, whether he goes to Liverpool, Man United, Chelsea or wherever. I think he will adapt to it very, very well. I would welcome him at Manchester United. I would just throw a word of caution. I'm not convinced we're actually in for him. It feels to me that Liverpool need this player more than we do. And our priority is a striker, which obviously Liverpool don't need. And I wouldn't be surprised if our name, and we have to be open to this. Look, we are approaching the transfer window and we do have to be very aware of this. You know as well as I do, we will be linked to hundreds of players this summer. Probably over, well, I say hundreds. We'd probably be linked to over 100 players this summer, of which we'll probably sign 2 or 3. So the percentage of every story, look, I think if you start with every story and go, there's a 90% chance it's not true, it's not a bad place to start until you start getting the real, focus on a player where loads and loads of people are talking about it. We've not got that with Alexi McAllister at the moment. Obviously, it's coming from Fabrizio, so you've got to be, he is mentioning Manchester United, so I think that's a credible line, but I think that's the only credible line that Fabrizio is mentioning as it could well be that we are being utilised to push the price up to Liverpool, who are desperate for midfielders. If you saw Liverpool this afternoon, they're defensively terrible. Are we a better footballing side than Brighton, says Suarez? No, we're not a better footballing side. We've got better players. We've got better expectations. We've got better prospects. Brighton are a fantastic side. But with all due respect to Lewis Dunk, he isn't Jose, he's not Martinez and he's not Rafael Varane. They're a fantastic side, but they're not Manchester United. And that's the step up that I think Alexi McAllister wants and will grasp. And I can see him being a real success at Arsenal, Man United, Liverpool or Chelsea. I just don't get the feeling we're going to get him. If we do, I'd be very happy. Feels like Nunez and Gakpo deals again, says JT. Well, the only difference with Nunez and Gakpo, and certainly Gakpo, was that we were all in for Gakpo and we didn't get the deal done, did we? Whereas Liverpool swooped in. And also, you do raise a very good point. And that good point is that when you think about it, Manchester United, we have to bear that in mind, even if we did want him. I mean, it's a great point, actually. Even if we did want him, are we any good in a head-to-head with a team like Liverpool? And the honest answer is probably no. I don't really know what's going on here tonight. I'm not happy about that. Ronnie Pickering. That's why. Not bright enough. Who would you prefer, Rasmus Højlund or Kane? Keep up the good work, Mark, says Stephen. Well, you can start the questions now if you want to. I'm happy to do that. I would prefer to... Look, who would... Well, you can do this. 2 can play at that game. Let's do it. Who would you prefer? Who would you prefer? Kane? Højlund? I've got to be honest, it's probably the more risky, but I'd probably go for Højlund because I just think that we're trying to build something, and I'd have more excitement about that. Sorry if you already went over this, but are there any updates with the sale? Swear I haven't heard anything in a while. We'll talk about that in a minute, Derek. Just moving on from Alexi McAllister, you may well have seen this interview from Caicedo. He's been speaking about his dream transfer. Now, I was pretty convinced, I'm pretty sure that Caicedo's a Manchester United fan. I'm sure. This is what I don't believe. I don't believe that these players actually do support Manchester United or Liverpool or what, because I'm pretty sure when we were linked to Caicedo, when Ollie was here, he was a Manchester United fan. I'm pretty sure he was. But now he's saying his dream transfer is Real Madrid. So This is what I mean. I'm sure he said I'm sure there was a story about him supporting Man United, but he's now saying that his dream transfer is Real Madrid. Yeah, I don't really give a shit, really. If he wants to go to Real Madrid, let him go. I don't want to sign those sort of players anymore. We had it with Ronaldo. There's no point in buying a player whose dreams move is Real Madrid, because they'll come in, they'll give you 3 good years, and they'll go and do their dream move. So if his dream move is Real Madrid, I'm being honest, don't bother. Like, really don't, because whenever their dream move is Real Madrid or Barcelona, they come in, they do well, and then they piss off. So if that's true, I wouldn't bother with it. Enough is enough. I don't want them to take players we are linked with. We shouldn't let them get a chance. Let their midfield rot. I'm furious, says Sheriff. I think he's talking about Liverpool. Do you think we'll get players who say my dream is to play for Newcastle? Well, we've never had a player that's genuinely said their dream was to play Man City. I just loved Sean Gota. I love Steve Lomas. Andy Dibble. I just grew up watching these players. Yeah, Paul Dickoff. Yeah, it was liquid football, literally. Evening, Mark. Sancho out, Garnacho in, says Warrior. Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute, actually. 69% of you would go with Højlund, which is quite interesting. But look, I don't know I don't know about Caicedo. I really like him. I think it's going to... The interesting thing about McAllister and Caicedo is we're going to see firsthand tomorrow how good they are. I think it's going to be a really interesting game. This is why we desperately need new ownership, says GDT. Our reputation is dog piss at the moment in the market. We have to build that back up. I completely agree with that. And just talking about that, I want to get through as much as I can tonight and then get into your questions, because it is a bit of a bonus show doing a Saturday night show. But this came in from the Manchester United Supporters Trust. I don't know when it came out, but this is literally, I read it about half an hour ago. So Manchester United Supporters Trust on the Glazers potentially staying. We're very clear on this. It's a worst case scenario. If the outcome of this process was propping up of the Glazer ownership with potentially more debt, not less, then I think that would be a disaster. And I think you would see open revolt from fans once again. So this is from the Manchester United Supporters Trust. Key words there. I think you would see open revolt from fans again. We'll talk about why that's important in a moment. Potentially, the only beneficiaries from that would be the 4 siblings who are most motivated to sell. That looks like a way for the 4 silent siblings to sell their stake, take their money, and Joel and Avram to continue. We are very, very clear that would be a disaster, and the reaction of the fans to that would be mutinous. Mutinous and revolt. This is very good wording from the Manchester United Supporters Trust. We know the 58 are arranging their protest on the 30th ahead of Aston Villa. So look, the vocality and unity, whether these groups get on, whether they don't, I think everybody should be united on this. I don't think it's about what you think about this person, that person. It's the same old thing we were talking about this morning. Have you actually ever met them? Do you actually know them? Ultimately, we're all United fans, and the reality is that the club is under the grip of an ownership that dictates failure. And what I like about that Manchester United Supporters Trust, and I know a lot of people don't trust the Man United Supporters Trust, and that's up to them. You can dislike or not trust a certain organisation, that's absolutely fine. But if they put a message out that you agree with, then that should be applauded and spread. And the reality is, they are very strong words from the official Man United Supporters Trust, who have links into the club around the fan forum and conversations, for them to be saying about the ownership, if the Glazers stay, there will be a revolt from the fans, and it will lead to mutinous behaviour from the fans. That's very strong words, because, if I sat here and said, look, if the Glazers stay, you're going to see games cancelled, you're going to see the share price drop, you're going to see the boycott of games. We're talking about on the 30th, not going in for the first 18 minutes for match-going fans. These things are all major actions, and you've got to applaud and back them all. It's not about, I like this, I like that. Ultimately, it's about the removal of the Glazers. We can all have conversations about whether Harry Maguire should be centre-back, or, whether you like fan content, or whether you like fanzines, or whatever. I mean, that's absolutely fine. People have got the right to express their opinion on those things. But when it comes to the Glazers, we're all on the same page, and I think it's really, really powerful stuff when you get the official Supporters Trust or Supporters Group. And look, I'm not saying that makes them the best, far from it, but when you get the official group that's got the relationship with the club saying mutinous and revolt behaviour from fans if the Glazers stay, that is basically saying, it's a threat. It's an indirect threat. It's not a threat. It's a warning that if the Glazers decide to stay, you will I've said it, haven't I? They reap the whirlwind. If they decide to stay, and then it all goes bad for them, well, they were warned. And I think it's a very powerful statement, a very strong statement. It's not a surprising one, but be under no illusions. Nobody, whether you've trusted them in the past or not, nobody is going to sit there and go, yeah, it's fine for the Glazers to stay for another 17 years. It's not, and there will be, a revolt from the fans. Of course there will, and more strongly than that, the people propping up the Glazers, because the Glazers can't afford to stay. So whoever funds the Glazers to stay, you are funding mercenaries. You are funding people who destroyed this football club. So, apparently Ben Foster's about to get promoted with Wrexham. Good. I don't want him doing playoffs in bloody May. It's about time he started presenting the football fill-in again. The Glazers don't care, says Leroy. Well, whether they care or not, the old adage and the old line is, you can't just have an attitude in life that, they don't care what we say, so let's just walk away. You've got to keep kicking at the door. Just because somebody says no doesn't mean you accept it and walk away. I mean, it does in a legal form. No means no. I just want to make that very clear. No means no if you're doing something illegal. But when it comes to, something you truly believe in that is legal and proper, then, just because somebody doesn't care what you think, like we're talking about here in relation to the Glazers, then, you've got to keep shouting about it. You can't just go, the Glazers don't listen to us. I completely agree. We can't argue players until the Glazers are gone, says Zach. And Evening Mark, would you pick up Seamus Coleman for free in the summer? He's like a cross between Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Delot. Useful for a few seasons, says Rory. I mean, Seamus Coleman's about 40, mate. Absolutely not. No. About 10 years ago, Seamus Coleman would have been a very interesting signing, but not now. Not now. Does Ben Foster work for me? Yeah. I'm his boss. I tell him what to do. Yeah, I'm sorting his contract out for next season. Of course he doesn't work for me. Right. So very interesting statement from the Manchester United Supporters Trust there. Also, just a few bits from that story from The Athletic we were talking about this morning about players that could leave Manchester United, and a little bit of a delve into it. I mean, this is a bit contradictory. It sort of starts interestingly and then completely contradicts itself. But it's from The Athletic, and it says, Jadon Sancho, 23, is perhaps United's most saleable asset, but United would be very hard pushed to find a club willing to reimburse the £73 million fee. I think what that is trying to say, in fairness, is that Jadon Sancho is probably the most sellable player for Manchester United this summer, because he probably doesn't really fit into Ten Hag's plans, and also he's still a young player and is a talent. But what it's also saying is you're never going to recover the £73 million, and he's also on ridiculous wages. So in a way, he's not the most sellable asset. In fact, it does contradict itself, doesn't it? Because let's be honest, who's going to buy Jadon Sancho? I mean, who's going to buy Jadon Sancho? I don't know. Newcastle might buy him, but they would probably only give us 40 million, and would they want to pay him 300 grand a week? I don't know where Jadon Sancho would go. You would need a manager at a club to go, I genuinely believe there's a world-class player there and I can get it out of him. But how can they get it out of him when Ten Hag can't? So I don't think Jadon Sancho is going anywhere. I still think the journey with Jadon Sancho is that we've got to try and get something out of him, because if we don't, we're going to take a big loss. Part of me just can't wait for the new owners. If it happens, Ten Hag under actual support is something I would love to see. I have faith in him, but under the Glazers, he hasn't got a chance, says JT. Thank you very much for that, JT. But also, The Athletic goes on to say that Newcastle have very serious interest in Scott McTominay. And while Ten Hag has been open to selling Aaron Wan-Bissaka, both players are good ages, 25 and 26 respectively, and could command good fees. Well, I think the McTominay one's quite interesting, because I think he's well liked. Well, I know he's well liked within the club, and that includes the manager. So I don't think there's a massive desire to put Scott McTominay on the transfer list. But on the other hand, is he ever going to be a first team player and you've got people willing to offer good money? And this is sort of what happened with Ghana last summer. They needed to sell somebody, and they ended up selling a player that had a value. Now, nobody would pay for Bailly. No one would pay for Tellez. Somebody would pay money for Garner, so they sold him. It wasn't because he was the worst player. It was because they could get money for him. And you might see something like that with Scott McTominay. Because Ten Hag looked at Garner pragmatically and went, probably not going to be a first-team player this year. I would loan him. Well, here's 15 million we can get in, and we need to get some money in. So they did a pragmatic deal. That might happen with McTominay this summer, where they go, don't really want to get rid of him, but not really a first-team player. There's 25, 30 million we can take there. So that might be how they approach it, because he's certainly liked within the club. As for Aaron Wan-Bissaka's been speaking himself, saying that, he likes being at the club. He's always been happy at the club. But yet we know we're looking at another right back. I don't know what it is. There just seems to be this this desire to listen to offers for Aaron Wan-Bissaka. Also in the Athletic, Everton made an approach for Anthony Elanga in January, and United may need to make a decision on Pellistri. United are conscious of not waiting too long to let go of emerging talent. So look, I think we're hearing more and more about players that potentially could leave this summer. But you know what? All I see is problems. I don't really see. It's worrying. It worries me, actually. It's worrying how many players that need to go, and yet every player you talk about, you find a problem. And when you've got people like John Murta and Richard Arnold in charge of transfers, a problem becomes insurpassable, doesn't it? We've seen it. I mean, even Anthony Martial, they talk about him in the Athletic, and they say, on paper, he's a very sellable asset. Plenty of Premier League goals, plenty of Premier League appearances, plenty of caps for France, but actually probably very difficult to sell due to his injury record. So from Sancho to Martial, from McTominay to Maguire, from Henderson to Williams, that none of them, I can think of 8 or 9 players I would sell at Manchester United, and none of them are easy to do. They're all problematic. Lack of interest, overpriced, too big a wage, don't want to go. As I said, I would sign 3 players if we could sell 10. I'd rather sign 3 and sell 10 than sign 4 and sell 6. I really do think a clear out has been ignored for too long. And the worrying thing is, if a manager is not allowed to clear out in their second summer, they're never going to clear out. Look at Mourinho, look at Van Gaal. You come in for the first summer, you assess over the first year, and that second summer should be a clear out. If Ten Hag doesn't get to clear out this summer, I think his job's going to be very, very difficult. They've got to allow him to clear out. And you've got to have the ownership to do that, and obviously we haven't got that. I honestly think selling Elanga would be a mistake, says Kyle. I like Rudolph Savino-Body, United stand on, perfect, cheers. It's nice to be live on a Saturday night. Smash a like, it's really nice to be live on a Saturday night. I forget what we were saying there. Elanga, I like Elanga. I've always liked him, I've never been a secret about that. But this season has been low standard, really low standard. I can't think of a good performance. I can think of a good 5 minutes. I can think of a good 10 minutes. But across this season, and we're nearly in May, I can't remember a good performance. I've seen a few, 3 or 4 good Harry Maguire performances. I've seen 3 or 4 good Scott McTominay performances. That's nowhere near enough in a red shirt. But Elanga, I can't think of one good performance this season, and that is a player going backwards. He's in reverse. It's Coldplay time. Stuck in reverse. Lights will guide you home. He needs a loan move, and I think he's been a bit unlucky. But he's also approaching that age where, can you afford to let him go on loan? Should we really be looking at getting a transfer fee? Warrior says, let's get the questions going. Warrior says, get your questions in. Saturday night, it's a bonus show. We've gone through the news. It's match day tomorrow. Get your questions in. Let's do it for the next half an hour or so. Warrior says, what is your prediction if we don't get Qatari investment? I will be truly gutted. United will have no chance. We need squad, first team rebuild. Well, I think we will get Qatari investment. I really do. But if we don't, I don't think Sir Jim Radcliffe's ownership model is terrible. I think it's infinitely better than the Glazers. I think we'll end up with Qatar. I really, really do, because they've got the money. But I don't think Sir Jim Ratcliffe's ownership model would be bad. I don't think we'd have the huge investment that people want, but I do think it would be better than the Glazers. There's more risk with Sir Jim. I think people are just a bit uncertain about it. Whereas with Qatar, you look at Newcastle and you look at Abu Dhabi with Man City and PSG with Qatar. You look at those ownership models and you go, well, you pretty much can predict what's going to happen. You can't predict success, but you can predict expenditure. Paul says, you rock, United Stand rock. Much love from the United States. Thank you very much, mate. Hope you're doing well. Wrexham have been promoted, so well done to them. I'm sure Ben will be enjoying that. I'll probably be presenting on Monday morning again, let's be honest. I'm going to get the phone call tomorrow night. I've got a stomach bug again. Bollocks. You're on a 48-hour piss-up. I think they're off to Vegas. I think that's what Ryan Reynolds is doing for him, flying him out to Vegas for a promotion party. It's all right for some, isn't it? I think if United won the title, the Glazers would probably give him a £10 voucher for Butlins. But yeah, well done to Wrexham, and Ben Foster's a nice guy. It's nice to see nice people doing well. It'd be a kick in the balls if the Glazers agree a sale to Qatar and the Premier League block it, says Rory C. Well, those are all things that we have to see. Cameron says, do you think we could sign more loan players this season till the summer where Qatar can take over? You don't get an abundance of loan deals in the summer though, do you? Really. Quiet Minds, welcome to the Members Club. Zero Blades, a member and a moderator, and said, would you take Welbeck as a backup to whoever we sign at number 9? Look, Ricky would take Danny Welbeck. 100% he would take Danny Welbeck. Danny Welbeck's 32. If we bought Danny Welbeck, I would really question why. I'd question why. Because I think Danny Welbeck's the sort of thing you do under the Glazers when you've got no money and it's the late January transfer window or late August transfer window and you've missed out on your targets and you get Danny Welbeck. I don't think Danny Welbeck's the sort of signing a club like Manchester City make. And I think that's what we've got to try and do. So I wouldn't be bringing Danny Welbeck back, if I'm being honest. I like the player and he could really cause us some damage tomorrow with Ferguson out. But no, I wouldn't be bringing him back. Nathan Allen says, what's your final top 6 prediction? And do you think Liverpool will nick as I do? Because last couple of games, attacking-wise, they're back to themselves. I watched the Liverpool game today. I think they were absolutely shite defensively. You look at us last week with Maguire and Lindelof. We kept a clean sheet against Forest. Liverpool conceded 2 at Anfield. So I think you can really measure how bad Liverpool's midfield and defence is. I don't think they're a threat to us. I don't necessarily think they're a threat to Newcastle. I think the top 4 will be as it is. I don't know what order it will be, but it will be Arsenal, Man City, Man United, and Newcastle. It'll either be Man City or Arsenal for the title, and it'll be us or Newcastle for 3rd or 4th. Top 6 is difficult. Villa got a good point at Brentford today. Brighton are doing fantastically well. Liverpool have got quite a good run in. So yeah. And Spurs, Spurs Newcastle tomorrow is a massive game. I'll be keeping an eye on that before us. But I think we'll get top 4, and I think Newcastle will as well. And I think Newcastle probably deserve it, like we do. I think Newcastle over the season deserve it. They had a bit of a wobble in the middle of the season, but they didn't lose games. They drew. Their start to the season was brilliant, and last few weeks it's been brilliant, of course, apart from the Villa game. Treble, are you worried about the treble? Well, I heard Pep Guardiola's stupid comments about, should Man United fans fear Man City getting the treble? And he said, no, we're neighbours. We should all be friendly. Jog on. He's such a wind-up merchant, isn't he? They've got a massive chance of winning the treble, which is why tomorrow is so important. I mean, it's so ridiculous if we lose to Brighton tomorrow and then we've got to hope Brighton can beat Man City. Hello, how about we beat Brighton and then we beat Man City? We've got to take ownership. We can be the ones that stop them winning the treble. Real Madrid could do it. Arsenal have got a chance, I suppose. But we've got a really big chance. Varane should be back for that final. We've got to be putting ourselves in the way. We've got to be the ones who do it. And tomorrow has to be I don't want to be relying on Brighton. I want us to do it. And tomorrow is massive. I mean, look, I'm not getting too hyped because I was hyped about Sevilla and we didn't even bloody turn up. But yeah, we've got to do it. Amer says, do you think Real Madrid have got the best chance? I worry about Real Madrid and how open they are at the back. I do. I think we've got to take ownership. Boza and Ben, thank you very much for joining the Members Club. You are legends of the chat. Keep the questions coming in. Maguire will also be available for the final, says Milan. Well, look, one thing I'm looking forward to tomorrow, Maguire is suspended, so we get to see Luke Shaw and Lindelof. But more importantly, if Varane comes back, it should be Varane and Shaw. That worked really well in January. So, look, we know we've got no Martinez until next season. What I would like to see, and fingers crossed we can see it, is I would like to see Luke Shaw and Varane. But for the time being, Luke Shaw and Lindelof. Also, there is a rumour that Martial's available. Now, fingers crossed that's true, because if Martial has actually, got himself off the pitch and protected an injury for once, that would be great. I mean, I mentioned this afternoon on That's Football. I've got to say it on here as well. There was, look, here we go again. There was some punditry on Sky today. It wasn't Gary. It was Tim Sherwood. And I was disgusted, and I did quote tweet it on my Twitter. But basically, he said this. This are his words. Anthony Martial drives me mad. If I was a manager, he just annoys me looking at him. His miserable face. He doesn't want to run. You're playing for the biggest club in the world. Just enjoy it. What a misguided, ignorant prat. I mean, look, I know there's a lot of you that would sell Anthony Martial. And that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a pundit on national TV, again, spouting bollocks. Absolute bollocks. This is worse than Bruno wants to come off when he didn't. Like, literally 2 weeks ago, there is an interview in a press conference with Erik ten Hag, the guy who manages Manchester United, and he said Anthony Martial is one of the hardest workers on the training ground. He is such a difference in the team because of his unselfishness, the way he runs the channels, the link-up play. He's really important and we're a better team with him. So the manager of the club has literally said 2 weeks ago, this guy works his arse off and when he's on the pitch, makes us a better team. But you've got a guy who's a failed coach himself. He's a wish version of Solskjaer as an interim. Talking about a player he's never bloody coached, who he doesn't even know, who the manager has said completely the opposite 2 weeks ago, and he's shouting him out. It's just complete and utter stereotypical bollocks. It's propaganda nonsense. He's got a miserable face. He doesn't run around enough. I'm sorry, Tim, nice but dim, but Erik ten Hag 2 weeks ago told you all about this player. So you're calling Erik ten Hag a liar and you know better. You are assessing a player on their face that you don't like. Why don't you like his face, Tim? What is it about his face you don't like? Because I don't think it's the fact that he's not smiling. Bloody hell, Tim. Where did you go? Happy school? I went to school like most people did. There were happy people, miserable people. We talk about mental health. Have you ever wondered why his face is a little bit like that? Maybe he's a shy individual. Maybe he needs an arm round his shoulder. I can't believe in 2023 we've got people on national TV coming out with stuff like, look at his face. His face gets on my nerves. He annoys me looking at his face. His miserable face. He doesn't want to run. Oh, Tim, do you live in his head? He doesn't want to run. Maybe look at the stats of all the running he does. Look, on Martial, he's injury prone. It's very frustrating. I understand United fans saying, I want to sell him because he's injury prone. But every time he's played this season, he's actually done really well in the system. I just think we're back again, aren't we? We're back again with this foreign negativity. As somebody said this afternoon on That's Football, imagine if he said that about Marcus Rashford. He'd have Rashford's brand all over him within seconds. It's just bang out of order. I wish he had said it about Rashford because he'd get absolutely owned. Well, Stephen says, I personally find the whole lazy label offensive because it always seems to be applied to black players. Well, I said that on That's Football this afternoon. me and Flex a few years ago were at an event, and we were speaking to an ex-footballer who was black, and we were talking about Anthony Martial, and it always sticks with me because we were talking about Anthony Martial, and I'm a big fan of Martial, and we were talking about at that time how Martial was constantly getting called lazy, and this ex-player said, you know what, it's really offensive because it's always black players that get called lazy, and it always stuck with me because I was like, yeah, and every time I hear it, I think. I'm not saying it's true or it's not true. That story is true, and what Stephen's saying there is his opinion as well. But you know what? When a player's being called lazy, and they're not lazy, I think it's lazy punditry. That's what it is. And to be honest with you, we've seen Marcus Rashford not putting effort in over the last couple of years. We've seen Jadon Sancho not putting the effort in over the last few weeks. But it's always Martial that gets called out for it. And actually, I think Martial, when he's fit, does put a shift in up front. And that's why Ten Hag likes him, because Ten Hag likes Weghorst. You know, you've got to put a shift in up front. So he can't be lazy. It's lazy punditry. And again, it's just the same as Martinez is too small for this league. You know, it's just lazy. They're the lazy ones. And look, as a United fan base, I'm not saying we all love Anthony Martial. I'm not saying everybody wants to keep him. But my perception of those of you who want to sell Martial, it's not because he's got a miserable face. It's not because he's lazy. It's because he's always injured. Jeff tried to smooth things over by pretending Tony phoned him up to say he don't like Sherwood's face either, says Glennie. That's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Enjoying the show tonight. Get your comments in. Greg says, playing the race card again, dear oh dear. Mate, look, that story I just told you is true. Stephen prompted it with his opinion. Greg, if you don't like those opinions, then go away. But I'm just telling you the story, and it's not the first time I've heard that either. And also, it's not the first time I've seen Anthony Martial called lazy, and I've never seen him be a lazy player. There was one game, I think we played behind closed doors against Sheffield United, January, and he was walking, and that was the one time I said, fucking hell, that was terrible for Martial. Now you've got Nikki says Martial's lazy. So Nikki, I'm sorry Nikki, you're going to get called out here. We've just had this conversation about Martial. We've told you about the connotations of it, and we told you it's not true, but you still think you've got a valid point to type in the chat Martial's lazy. So please Nikki, can you follow it up with Ten Hag's a liar and you don't back the manager? Because as I said about Tim Sherwood, Nikki, Erik Ten Hag multiple times this season has said Anthony Martial makes us a better team because he leads from the front, he's an unselfish player, he's huge in the link-up and he's huge in the press. How can you be lazy if you do all those things? I see it. Erik Ten Hag has communicated it to the fan base, but Nikki and Tim, and probably a few more of you, you think Erik Ten Hag doesn't know what's best for the team, and you don't think Martial runs around, and you think Martial's lazy. Because that's fascinating to me. That makes me question, what are you even talking about? Because you are now fact-checking the manager and stats. This Martial doesn't run around thing is stereotypical, dangerous bullshit, because it's just not true. It's just not true. You know, it's like saying that Casemiro's a steady Eddie, or Lisandro Martinez isn't very good in the air because he's 5'10". They're all factually incorrect statements, and that is why, you know, it's like you know, I think I've been called a Forest fan about 1,000 times today. It's not true. I was born in Nottingham. You know, people say it and they believe it, but it's not true. Martial is not lazy. He is not miserable. He's just got a face that's like that. You don't know the guy. And it's very dangerous to start saying that and spreading that sort of bullshit. I think the media doesn't give Lindelof enough respect, says JT. Well, you know, I've said this so many times before. Who's had the better season, Victor Lindelof or Harry Maguire? It's Victor Lindelof. How many questions have been asked about Victor Lindelof? How much praise has Victor Lindelof been given? I've seen Victor Lindelof in the last 6 months consistently get the same player rating as Harry Maguire, and yet he's been better. It's, we're all infected by bias. It's just different levels. I believe we should treat Sancho like a youngster. He looks at his best off the bench. If we can't sell him, let's treat him as an option of bench next season. It's a good point, Tom. Dej says left wing Garnacho, Rashi, striker Osman, Højlund, but Martial right wing, Anthony, Ahmad. Would you sell Sancho to get this front six? I don't think you can sell Sancho, Dej. You're right, Mark. One Football, Caicedo said playing for United was his dream while he was in Ecuador in 2020 and talking with English clubs. All right, okay. So he just changes it based on who he wants to join then. Because love the show, Mark. Cheers, mates, says Gabrielle. Look, if you want to treat Jadon Sancho as a youngster and a bench option, and that works for Sancho and that works for United, who are we to complain? I think the big barrier to that is that we spent £75 million on him and he's on 300 grand a week. And I think the club won't be happy with that. I don't think Ten Hag will be happy with that. And I don't think Sancho will be happy with that. And I'll tell you for why. Jadon Sancho costs £75 million, is on 300 grand a week. There's a certain amount of belief in yourself and expectation from yourself when that happens. You expect to start. You expect to be one of the stars of the team. And when you're sat on the bench, you're not happy. Erik Ten Hag looks at his wage bill and goes, a massive part of my wage bill is going on a player that's sat on the bench. That's not right. And then the club look at it and go, we've spent a lot of money on this player and we're not really getting a return on it. So I think all three parties aren't happy. So I just don't see that working long term. It doesn't work for anybody. I think everybody's unhappy with that scenario. It's like buying Cristiano Ronaldo, isn't it? You give him £500,000 a week. He's the star of the team. He wins Player of the Year. He's the top scorer. And then you go, you're now going to be a bench option because we want you to stay, but we want you to be a bench option. How did that go? Ronaldo lost his shit. Ten Hag didn't like it either because it became, a constant question in the press conference and a constant battle. And the club, who tried to make it happen, suddenly realised brand Ronaldo was a problem. It doesn't work. It should work, but it doesn't work because you're trying to massage three different egos with three different demands. You can't just turn Sancho into a prospect young player because that's not what we bought, that's not what we're paying for, and it takes up a large proportion of your wage bill. So it will annoy Ten Hag eventually because he'll be like, he's getting paid all that money could be used elsewhere. It doesn't work. I've always said to solve the Sancho problem, he's got to be in the first team. That's what you've got to get him up to. And it's going to be really interesting to watch. 67% of you would go with Højlund over Kane. Interesting. Very interesting there. Keep the questions coming in. They've been good tonight. Pepe says, how do you think Rashford would do next season if we were to get a real goal scorer like Osman, for example? We have seen how Rashford can thrive with someone like Weghorst, but I fear for him. I think creativity is very important in this team. We've only had glimpses of it this season. I think we had glimpses of it. I think we had a glimpse in the first half an hour against Sevilla. Yes, how we ended up losing that game from the first half an hour, it just didn't look possible over the two games. Rashford didn't play in that game. We've seen glimpses with Greenwood, Martial and Rashford on the creativity and goals we can get in a front three. I think we know what Ten Hag wants to do. We've seen it at Ajax. I think if you bring in a Harry Kane or a Victor Osimhen, then Marcus Rashford can't always be about cutting inside and shooting. He's got to have a creative angle, and that'll make him a better player anyway. Because if I'm a defender and I'm against Marcus Rashford, look, I might not be able to stop him if I want to, but I know what he's going to do. I know he's going to cut inside and try and take me on, and he's going to shoot. But if he can add the uncertainty of he might pass, he might use Luke Shaw, he might whip a cross in, then that might sometimes give him an extra yard that they think I'm going to cross and I'll get a shot off. So I think Rashford still, oddly, I still think, excitingly, I still think Rashford isn't the complete player. I still think he's got to improve his creativity. And I think that would be more prevalent if you brought in a goal scorer, because let's be honest, Martial's been injured most of the season and Weghorst is just happy to be here. He is just happy to be here. So I don't think he's going to be moaning, or I don't think he's got the authority to moan about the lack of service. which is something Ronaldo moaned about. The manager may have to take statements to maintain... Sahaj says, the manager may have to make statements to maintain equilibrium in the dressing room. He doesn't need to be honest all the time. Martial is terribly inconsistent, Mark, and so is half the squad. I completely disagree with you, Sahaj, because I've watched Martial this season, admittedly not as much as I would like because of injury, but we're a better team with Martial in the team. We're a balanced team. He's very good at leading the press. He's very good at running the channels and creating space. He's very good in the link-up play. So I completely disagree with you. His injuries frustrate me. They really, really do. But this myth that Martial isn't very good and he's lazy is something perpetuated by a certain element within our fan base that have always thought that. And I respect that. You don't like the player. That's absolutely fine. But I think you're also blind to the positives because you don't like him. And I don't think Erik ten Hag tells lies because he's hardly had Martial this season. And it's very easy when you've got a player that you don't have not to talk about them. He brings Anthony Martial up all the time. He doesn't need to. And he brings him up because he knows how important he is to be fit. And it's a massive frustration for him. If it was a player he didn't want, he wouldn't talk about him. He doesn't need to. He's not fit. Why talk about him? Welcome to Members Club, Nathan. What pisses me off about Kane is that I feel that we are pushed to accommodate a 30-year-old striker because his other options are not feasible. Look, there's two options for Harry Kane, Sheriff. Thank you very much for your super chat. There are two options for Harry Kane. Stay at Spurs or sign for Manchester United. If he signs for Manchester United, they'll probably do a video. You know, it'll be a big, massive signing. It'll be their marquee signing of the summer. And it will be exciting. He's a world-class player. But it will also be in the back of my mind, and probably in the back of many minds, is it really the quality of the player is exciting, but is it really a coup? Is it really a scoop? Is it really a job well done? Or is it a tap-in transfer? Player wants to leave Spurs because they'll never win anything to come to a bigger club. And we're the only bigger club that can sign him. Can't go Chelsea, can't go Arsenal, can't go Man City, can't go Liverpool, won't want to go Newcastle, doesn't want to leave the Premier League. Come to Manchester United, Harry. You know, it's the only club he can push for. Doesn't mean he's not going to be a good signing, but yeah, I don't think it's one the club will make out is amazing. But really, we all know it's a bit of a tap-in signing. Although I say that, it's not going to be an easy signing. You know, Spurs will drag it out. Across his career, Rashford is averaging an assist roughly every 5 games, 67 in 351 games. That needs to be 1 in 3, says Rory. And I think it can be. Look, I do the watch-alongs. I see the live chat. I watch the games. There's numerous times where people are saying, he's got to pass that. He's got to pass that. He can definitely do it. And I think Ten Hag's the man who can do it. Mark, if we wait a year, we could take Kane on a free since he has 1 year left, says United. Carol says, I still think he could go to Chelsea, especially if Poch goes there. I don't know whether to... Well, I will say it. If Harry Kane went to Chelsea, I'd be quite happy. I think he'd do really well there. But as I said, I'd be more excited with the other option, whether it's Ramos, Vlahovic, Osimhen, Højlund. I'd be more excited by those 4 than Kane because it's our player. It's something new. Harry Kane's a Spurs player. He'll always be a Spurs player. He's been there for 10 years. He's a Spurs player. Spurs are a rival. I don't want to give Spurs 100 million quid. You know, when we took Berbatov from Spurs, they weren't really a team that consistently got in the top 4. They've probably been in the top 4 more than us in the last 6 years. You know, it's a bit like when we got Mourinho. I was excited. He's a top-class manager, but he's a Chelsea manager. I think Martial should mentor Elanga, says Kyle. Twice now, Martial got called lazy after games where he was carrying an injury and had to be more intelligent with his movement. The Man City home game, says Glenny Boy. Look, Martial, Bruno, David De Gea, they're just easy targets when United do bad. It's always the same, in my opinion. I see nobody talking about giving Bruno a double. A youngster would be nice, wouldn't it? Oh, a backup, Elliot. I wonder what double what we were talking about there. I mean, and a youngster would be nice. My mind was wandering. Yeah, we need a backup for Bruno Fernandes. Although I do think Sabitzer can do it, and I do think Eriksen can do it. I think if you did bring an Alexi McAllister in, you could actually play Casemiro, McAllister, and sometimes play Eriksen as a 10. I think we just need more options. I think Fred and McTominay are quite limiting, aren't they? Eriksen can play box to box and 10. Bruno, we know, is a number 10, but can also play 8 and sometimes 6. Casemiro is a 6. Sabitzer can play 8 and 10. But with Fred, he's not really a 6. He's not really attackingly intelligent enough to be an 8 at the highest level. Scott McTominay's not a 6, but again, is he really an 8 at this level? They're good squad players, but they're not actually very good. They're not actually good in one role. They're more fill-ins, aren't they? And actually what we need is specialists. So I think if you did bring an Alexi McAllister in, or a Caicedo in, or a De Jong in, it gives you more. If I'm Erik ten Hag and I've got De Jong, I could rest Casemiro and play De Jong with Eriksen and Bruno. Or I could play Casemiro with De Jong and rest Bruno and play Eriksen. Or I could play Casemiro, De Jong, Bruno. It just gives me options, and every option is a good option. Whereas if Ten Hag wants to rotate now, Casemiro's out for McTominay, or Eriksen's out for Fred. It's just not the same. I think we need to bring a player in to give us more options. Mario G says, what do you think about Ruben Neves or Ward-Prowse? I don't think Ward-Prowse is good enough. I've said this before. Very good player, but I don't think he's good enough for this level. He's an instant bench player, and we don't need that. You don't buy bench players. If you want to be the best, you don't buy bench players. I know Man City did it with Calvin Phillips, but I think they had quotas to fill on homegrown. Like, you don't buy bench players. You buy players that are first-team players. Trossard for Arsenal, I thought was a very clever signing because he's good enough to start for them. I know he's not starting, but he's good enough to start. We need to buy players that challenge our first-teamers. I think if you buy a player that's instantly going on your bench, the expectations are not great. Ward-Prowse is good enough to be on our bench, but I want somebody who can challenge for the first team, and he's not better than what we've got in the first team. As for Ruben Neves, I think he's an interesting player. He reminds me a little bit of Carvalho, the Portuguese midfielder, who seemed to get linked to Man United and Arsenal for about 6 years, and it never happened. Surely Ruben Neves is going to have to move this summer. And look, maybe he will get a move to Liverpool. Maybe he will go to Man United. Maybe he'll go to Barcelona. But I'd go for Neves over Ward-Prowse. I think he's got the better capabilities to play and start for a top 4 side. Abhishek also thinks Kane to Chelsea could be a possibility. I think if Kane... Look, I think Pochettino to Chelsea, and this is United stand relevant. I don't know whether you've seen it, but Pochettino is one of the favourites to go to Chelsea now. And I did a video on That's Football saying I think it's a massive mistake, but it's their mistake, it's not ours. This time last year, well actually it wasn't this time last year because Ten Hag had been appointed, but remember about 13 months ago, last March, every show was, we've got to get Ten Hag. It was almost like a campaign, hoping that someone at United would watch it and go, the fans want Ten Hag. We desperately didn't want Pochettino. His win ratio against the top 6 was worse than Ollie's. He's rubbish against the top 6. He's good at getting the top 4. He's good at, stat padding against the lower teams. And yeah, taking Spurs to the Champions League final was great, but how many years ago was that? I don't think Pochettino's a great manager at all. But the positive of him going to Chelsea, they've probably got the money and they might have the pull to take Harry Kane. So look, if we've got competition for Kane, I think that's a good thing. Because we'd probably lose. We're not very good when we've got competition for a signing. But I think it's an open goal for United, and I can see Harry Kane coming to Manchester United. I just think I said it back in September when it wasn't really a story. I just had this hunch that we would sign Harry Kane. And I still believe we will. Would you take Ivan Toney at Manchester United, says Harv. You know what? I can't get past the fact that it won't happen because the gambling charges, which he's not had yet, will lead to a ban, and even if that ban is 4 months, he wouldn't play until January. So I just don't think you can... Man United need a striker, and you can't have a striker that's not going to start scoring goals till January. And actually, if he comes in January, is he going to straighten the team, or is there that adaptability and fitness? you'd lose a year with Tony, really, which is a shame because I think he's good enough to go up a level. But until we know until we know what's happening with Ivan Toney and his, these gambling charges, I think it's not a deal that really suits us because we need a striker that can start. A lot of people talking about Ollie Watkins at Villa. You know what? If he was happy to come to Man United and compete against an Osman or a Harry Kane, i.e. sit on the bench a bit, I think he'd be a very good option. But I wouldn't take him as our out-and-out striker. I'd probably take Watkins over Toney for the reasons I've just said, but I wouldn't take him as the number one striker to score our goals. I think we've got to aim a lot higher than that. And with all due respect to Watkins, do you think Man City would sign him? Do you think Liverpool would sign him? That's the level of player we need. For too long, we've overpaid. We need to start buying the best. Ankit says, the Man United stock has some crazy call options for 19th of May expiry. In simple words, big guys are expecting a deal to be reached by then or before, says Ankit. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much. Couple of members with a comment here. Lautaro is definitely not a United player, talking about Lautaro Martinez. And Pap says Watkin is not a natural finisher. Yeah, but I think I like his work rate. I think he'd be in a dream world, I wouldn't mind him as the bench option, but I think he'd be way too expensive for that, and I don't think he'd necessarily want that. He wants to play first team football. Nishant is a member. He says, why didn't Ten Hag give permanent captaincy to Bruno? Clearly Maguire shouldn't be captain. I think he made the right choice. Again, that might shock people, but I think he made the right choice. Harry Maguire was always staying for the year. You've just inherited a club where, unless you've had your head buried in the sand, they've had the most toxic dressing room in years. Leaks all over the place. People not getting on. Cliques and leaks. That's what United were last year. If you're the manager, the first thing you want to do, whether you rate the players or not, is build unity. If he changes the captain and keeps that person, you are creating a rod for your own back. I think he has to keep Maguire as captain this year because he wasn't going to sell him. And look, we know. I don't know Harry Maguire. More than happy to have a chat with him. Probably wouldn't want to do it. Mates with Gary. But on a serious note, we know Harry Maguire's personality because we see it all the time in interviews. Do you think he would react well to having the captaincy taken off him? I don't think he would. I don't think a lot of people would. So I think Ten Hag got it right. Keeping Maguire as captain was probably a really good move, in my opinion. He's hardly played him, but he's still the club captain. Now, next year, you've got to make that change because you can't really have a 30-year-old as your club captain because 30 is not old. They should be playing. So if he's not going to be playing next year, he shouldn't have the captaincy. But more importantly, he probably should leave. But I think he got it right, keeping him as the captain this season. In fact, I'm pretty sure he did. Because you don't want to lock the boat. You don't want to rock the boats. Livia's got a cold. Any remedies? I actually use a nasal spray, which is good when when you first get the feeling of the cold. It's really good. Also, if you've that Vicks vapor rub that on your soles of your feet. Put some socks on though because it's quite greasy and go to bed. Rest and recuperation. Plenty of liquids, water, none of that stuff. Ride it out. Do you think, I don't mean literally start riding it out, but do you think it's mad how well Ryan Reynolds is done considering he's a celeb and knows nothing about football and he actually loves the club and made how much is growing with the fans and the sport? I think it just comes down to, Nathan, I wouldn't go to town on this. How hard is it to take over a National League club, give it more money than everybody else by about 100 and get promoted? It'd be a shock if they didn't get promoted. But I think the way to run any football club, and we've seen it with Chelsea, is if you've got the money and you want to be successful, get the people in who know what they're doing. Don't have an ego to think that you can run the football club because you end up wasting a lot of money and causing chaos. And I think that's the warning to any owner. I think some football clubs are chaotic. Look at Salford. They sacked their manager. He's just got promoted with Leyton Orient. Now Salford still could get promoted. They're close to the playoffs, but I think the problem comes when people who don't know what they're doing start thinking they do know what they're doing. Like Bowley, exactly. So look, we'll see what happens with Wrexham. The big thing for them in the National League is, can they now in the professional leagues get promoted? It's very, very difficult. But I think the blueprint. Sorry, Chelsea fans, but the blueprint is for any owner is to recruit a good director of football, recruit a good manager, recruit a good director, a good CEO. Don't think that you can be, this is not the world's most real game of football manager. Your input is valid, and Roman Abramovich made decisions on sacking managers, but it was always guided by good football people as well. So, I think that's the way to do it. Anyway, I could talk and talk all night. Thank you very much for tuning in tonight. Really enjoyed it as a bonus show. A like on the video would be appreciated, as always. And please do subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. Don't forget that we have been sponsored by Surfshark on the show tonight. You can scan the QR code next to me or go through the link in the description. 3 months free with Surfshark to try it out. Virtual private network. I think you'll really enjoy it. Give it a go. Links in the description. And tomorrow's match day. Massive game. You know what? I know we were set back by that Sevilla result and we've sort of been avoiding the thought of football. But look, there's a final against Man City. There's a team, our neighbours, looking to do a treble. It's our responsibility to win. And I'd like to win another trophy. So let's go and do it tomorrow. We're Manchester United. Let's do it. Thanks everyone for watching. Take care, stay safe, and thanks for your company tonight. I'll speak to you all in a bit. Big day tomorrow.